Hey, sixth grade, I hope everyone's having a great day. Before I start going over the lesson that we did today, I want to set out a quick reminder that today, Thursday, April 2nd, I'm going to be hosting a Google Meet session from 2:30 p.m. to 3 o'clock. So please feel free to come on there with any questions, comments, concerns that you have on what we're learning. If you're confused on any of the homework, exit tickets, lessons, if you want me to go over something, I am more than happy to do that. So I hope to see a lot of you on there. The link is going to be in Google Classroom. It's going to be on your little stream or dashboard, whatever you want to call it. It is the exact same link that Miss Drexler posted on Tuesday for our first Google Meet that we had. I'm going to be using that link just to facilitate this one too. So go ahead at 2:30. You can go ahead and click on that. I will be on there right at 2:30 after I finish with my fifth graders, and we can get talking and I can answer anybody's questions on anything that you have. So let's get started for today. So today you had to copy down notes from lesson 13. So we're in module 5, lesson 13. Your problems were on page 161 and 162. And this lesson, it consisted of formulas for finding volume. So a lot of formulas, a lot of multiplication, a lot of math in this one. So let's just get started. I'm on page 161. I'm going to be going over example 1 with you right now. So what we have here is, it says determine the volume of a cube with sides of 2 1/4 centimeters. So here's your formula. I have my V equals S cubed. So here's the number that I'm working with. I'm working with 2 1/4 centimeters. So I have my V, which is volume, equals, so this whole S cubed things means that I need to multiply 3 times. So I have 2 1/4 times 2 1/4 times 2 1/4. Just like in the last lesson, we had our mixed numbers. We want to change those to improper fractions. So again, how you do that, if you forgot, is you take your denominator, you multiply it by your whole number. So we have 4 times 2 equals 9, and then you add it to your numerator. Or I'm sorry, I just gave you the answer. 4 times 2 equals 8, and then you add it to your numerator, and that gives you 9, and then you're going to keep your denominators. Your denominators will always, always, always stay the same. If you started with a 4 as a denominator, you're going to end down here with a 4 as a denominator. So I have V equals 9/4 times 9/4 times 9/4. And again, when you're multiplying fractions, the great part about multiplying fractions is that you do not need to find a common denominator. You can just take your numerators, multiply them across, take your denominators and multiply them across. So it makes the work a little bit easier on you. So I'm going to go ahead and take my numerators. So I have 9 times 9 times 9. And then I got 729 when I got that. And then I'm going to take my denominators, which are 4 times 4 times 4. And I got 64 centimeters cubed. If you were to take these two numbers and divide them, so if you were to do 729 divided by 64, you would get 11 and 25/64 centimeters cubed. So that's how you did that one. And this is the formula right here, right there. For example 2, it says determine the volume of a rectangular prism with a base area of 7/12 feet squared and a height of 1/3 feet. So for this one, I'm going to go ahead and use the formula V equals base times height. So it said that I had a base area in my word problem. It said I had a base area of 7/12. So I'm using that number as my base. And then it said I had a height of 1/3. Base times height, your base times your height. So 7/12 times 1/3. Again, multiply your numerators across, you get 7. Multiply your denominators, you get 36, and your label for that will be feet cubed. So that's example 2. Now going on to exercise number 1, it says use the rectangular prism to answer the next set of questions. So I have A and B that I'm using our rectangular prism to answer. So, number 1, A, says to determine the volume of the prism. So I know that I have to use the formula V equals base times height. So what I'm doing here is I know that the base area, it tells me right here, my base area is 13 over 2. So I went ahead and I plugged that in for my base, 13 over 2. And then my height, which is right here, I had 5/3. So I'm multiplying my 13 over 2 times 5/3. Multiply your numerator. So 13 times 5 is 65. 2 times 3 is 6. And if you were to take these two numbers, 65 divided by 6, you'll get 10 and 5/6 feet cubed. So that's how you do A. Now for B, it says determine the volume of the prism if the height of the prism is doubled. So we have our height right here, which is 5/3. And if it's doubled, all I'm going to do is I'm going to take that 5/3 and I'm just going to multiply it by 2. And I'm going to put it over 1 so that way I have a fraction going with a fraction. It just makes it easier to look at. So I'm going to multiply the numerators across. 5 times 2 is 10. 3 times 1 is 3. My label on that will be feet. And now I'm going to use my formula. So I have V equals base times height. So I know that I'm going to have to use 13 over 2, my area, my base area right here, 13 over 2. And I'm going to multiply it by my new height, which I found up here because now my height's doubled. So I'm not going to use this for my height anymore. I'm going to use this one because this question asks us to double it. So this is my new height for right now. So I took my 13 over 2 and I'm multiplying it by 10/3. And then I moved it over here instead of going down. So my work is now moved over here. Multiply across 13 times 10 equals 130. 3 times 2 equals 6. So you get 130 over 6 feet cubed. And if you were to take this 130 and do long division and divide it by 6, you would get 21 2/3 feet cubed. So that is how you did those ones. I think the most difficult thing for me, even when I was your age, was remembering all the different formulas for volume because each, shape had a different one. Because at first you started working with like length times width times height, and now you're working with base times height, and now there's a V equals S squared or S cubed. So there's kind of a lot of formulas. So if you try to keep it organized and really read the word problems, you'll be able to understand it. So now we're on page 162 now. We're going to go ahead and go work on C. We are still working with this right here, with our information from right here. So for C, it says to compare the volume of the rectangular prism in part A with the volume of the prism in part B. What do you notice? So the volume of the rectangular prism in part A, we got 65/6 for part A. And then it said with the volume of the prism in part B. So for part B, this was the volume of our prism that we found. And if you were to take your 65/6 and multiply it by 2, you would get 130 over 6. 130 over 6, which is the exact same answer that we got for B right here. And when you do that, it says, what do you notice? I noticed that the volume doubled. So if I take this, multiply it by 2, I'm doubling it. This is B, 130 over 6, it doubled. So that's that. Now for D, it has a chart, and it says, use the table below to determine the relationship between the height and the volume. So what I did is I took my height, and then I looked at my volume. So I had, and the chart, it says you have 5/3, and then it says that your volume was 65 over 6. And if you were to take that 5/3 and you were to times it by 3, you'd get 65/6. So you notice that it tripled. And now it says, what happens to the volume as the height was what happened to the volume when the height was quadrupled? So this would be your answer. It quadrupled. And then it says, what conclusions can you make when the base area stays constant and only the height changes? So right here was our base area right here, and it's saying that this is going to stay constant, but only the height changes. So this is going to change. So as we were doubling this, we were tripling it. So our height right here, that's changing. So I said whatever happens to the height, the volume will do the same. So if you were to double the height, then your volume is going to double. If you were to triple your height, then your volume is going to triple. So whatever happens to the height, the same thing is going to happen to the volume. It goes hand in hand together. So that was your lesson for today, for Thursday, April 2nd. I know I said it in the beginning, but we do have a Google Meet at 2:30 to 3 o'clock. I would love to see everybody there. I'd love to see everyone's faces. I'm sure that you all have questions. I know this whole distance learning thing is something totally new for you all, but it's a good experience and you're all doing great with it. You're all working really hard. So keep up the good work and I will see you all very soon.